Another question.
Hi, Regis Kortmont from BuzzFeed. I'm the underdressed person in the room. So I know that, Lawrence, you might appreciate this analogy with Allen Iverson talking about practice. Who needs practice, right? I've heard practice over and over again. The majority of training I've done is one and done, and then you hope, right? And you come up with opportunities for them to practice, but very few people show up. So I'd love to hear examples from the panel of things that you've done to help create a culture of practice versus one and done, wasted effort, all of that.
Yeah, good question. So how do you create a culture of practice where practice in itself becomes the habit, if you will? Any thoughts?
I can speak from a basketball standpoint. I think it's part of your culture of this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we're going to get better. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes I know it's a lot in terms of from a motivation standpoint, in terms of trying to get people to come back, but I always come back to the point that was initially made. If you constantly have to motivate the same people, they're the wrong people. They really are. Because at the end of the day, you have to be self-motivated. And look, everyone responds to different stimuli, but if every day that person needs the latest and greatest technique, if every day that person needs the win one for the Gipper speech, they're not going to help you. They can't. Yeah. And again, maybe I'm from more of a cutthroat type of environment, but it comes down to this. You have to have a thirst and love for what you do. Now, in the corporate world, the one thing that I know that I'm blessed in, I love what I do. And the guys that I coach, they love what they do. But don't be, I guess, maybe misled. Not all of them love winning, okay? Not all of them have gotten into it for the love of the game. Initially, that was their love, okay? But then this came involved, right? And so sometimes your passion can change. Yeah. You love what it can get you, but you don't love the process it takes. And that's why, to get back to practice, is I think it's very important to have the right models. In a basketball situation, you'll always see the teams that win in the NBA are teams with veterans that have the proper habits. Because then a young guy comes in and he sees those habits. See, Oklahoma City, for anyone who's a basketball fan, they're one of the better teams in the league. 3 years ago, they were 3-29. They were all young guys with all very poor habits. They got rid of the bad veterans, the ones that didn't model the right habits, and they brought in winning veterans who understood the value. The only way we're going to get better is to really focus not on the results, but on the process of daily improvement. Well, how do you get better every day? You have to practice every single day. Well, how do you practice? You got to practice with the proper habits at the proper intensity level, and you have to be able to take constructive criticism / coaching, okay, when you're not doing it hard enough or well enough. And I think when you have that culture and you're, again, whether it's your executives in the corporate world, in my case, it's your veteran players or your best players, okay, they're going to help. And the last thing I'll say about it is, I used to say this, if your best player is your hardest worker and your most unselfish player, you're going to win. Now, if it's not, as a coach, you better rent, not buy, because you're not going to be there long. And I would say the same thing in your companies. If your top producers are modeling the right behavior, well, unless you just don't have the right character alongside of them or behind them, it's hard not to follow that example. But if your top producer and the one who's getting all the credit embodies everything that's not right that you want your company, then it's kind of what you said, Jerry, in terms of what are you allowing in your culture?
You know, and just from a corporate standpoint, and I'll reference the program that Joe talked about, getting people to practice is not always that easy. But one of the things that I have found over the years that I try to do, we aren't always successful at it. As organizations, we have this desire that if we're going to train people, we need to train everybody. We need to solve everybody and make everybody better. Mm-hmm. I've always kind of stepped back and said, no, what I want to deal with is give me the people who are at the top and let's make them better so that they can become our best practitioners and share that and move it down the organization. And the people at the bottom, in a lot of cases, it's probably not worth the effort to try to fix them. And we spend a lot of time trying to fix people who are in the wrong roles, in the wrong jobs, and don't have what it takes to get it done. So part of creating that practice culture, if you can, is to say, can we segment out the best and take them to a next level and then use them to model an example for the others, as opposed to trying to solve the ones who are challenging at the bottom, which is a little bit reversed than the way a lot of times the organizations think.
How true. I mean, I know, Jerry, there are a lot of HR folks out here, and having
maybe
my
I shouldn't have said that then.
my former life in that area myself, when I assessed how I spent my day, very often 80% of the time was on the weakest player as opposed to the strongest player. So we have limited resources. Where are we going to put our time and effort?
Lisa, just one thing to add on the practice. How do you make it so that it's sustained? I think a practice culture goes hand in hand with a feedback culture. So in an organization, if we set the expectation when people are hired that you're going to receive a ton of feedback, and maybe even practice giving them feedback while you're interviewing them, they'll be prepared for that. And if the leaders can demonstrate that they are open to feedback, they are modeling what they want their other people to do. So I think the two things really go hand in hand.
Panelists, I want to thank you so much. We need to move on to the next section of our program today. We heard about mindset. We heard about a sensitivity to cultural differences and recognition that not everybody learns the same way. And we also talked a little bit about accountability, right? That there's ownership both from an organization standpoint, from a leader standpoint, as well as the individual's standpoint. And we're going to keep the conversation going, I'm sure. And I thank you very much for being here with us today. And panelists, thank you as well.